Right now, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Stop the middle, it's a base hit!
Meeting in the middle.
Like.
They fought for the freedom of Middle.
The middle of a war! Freaking ridiculous!
Why don't we have a seat to talk it over?
No reshoots are necessary for us to capture the vision in mind for the latest episode of the Middle Seats podcast, the best seat in the house for all things movies and entertainment. I'm the director in charge of this podcasting endeavor, Andrew Auger. Let's join my crewmates. I say crewmates in different contexts every single week. We live in a society that doesn't deserve his preciousness, Mr. Nate Lungarini.
Oh, that's adorable. Thanks, Drew. I've needed that.
I gotta read this next part correctly because there's a lot of it's very punny. If we cut his parts from editing, there's a lot less stepping on points that make Nate and I go woof. Mr. Jake Hensler.
I'm triggered about the "we live in a society" part. I don't really care what you said to me afterward.
In either case, accurate.
See, I went with one of the news items this week for the intro because I feel like the movie we're talking about is too heavy to make jokes about. To make Judas and the Black Messiah, which is our movie tonight, funny, and I was like, nah, let's not even go there.
It's not
worth it. Anyway, the Middle Seats podcast, best seat in the house for all things movie and entertainment. If you are joining us for the first time, our show is divided into 3 segments. We start the show with Lobby Talk, where we go back and forth on a topic pitched by a member of the crew, like we are waiting out in the lobby of a movie theater, getting snacks, chilling, waiting online for Avengers 23 or whatever movie we'll be seeing together in the future, and we talk for about 10 to 15 minutes on that. Then we go into our news segment. We've got 3 pieces of news this week, and then we go into our main review, which, as I just said, is of Shaka King's Judas and the Black Messiah. How we doing, gents? Everybody have a nice Valentine's Day weekend? Love is in the air.
I'm like 99% sure I'm negative, but I technically was exposed to COVID on Wednesday at work, so I've been in my room doing nothing and seeing nobody. So...
Did you buy yourself some chocolates there, Jake?
My mom got me some chocolates, which was great.
There you go. You
That's
still
really
got a little
nice.
Valentine's love in there.
It was actually a funny story. I completely jokingly yelled out on Valentine's Day. I was like, hey, where are our chocolates? Like, it's Valentine's Day. Completely kidding. I'm 25. Like, I don't need chocolates from my mom anymore. And she started laughing and then walked down the stairs with a box of chocolates. And I was like, oh, well, thanks.
Well, then don't you look like the jerk?
Yeah, no, I felt bad. I was like, wait, I was kidding. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I can feel Nate getting flustered. So I would love to pitch it to him for our lobby talk.
Let's all go to the lobby.
You're in the lobby? What do you look like?
I will blow up the block before you can make the lobby.
All right, so like Drew, I was really struggling, I guess, to come up with a topical lobby talk for such a heavy movie, because we usually like to keep this segment light. And what I settled on was, this is a movie about a public speaker, civil rights activist, and now we got movie speeches. And we can make that a little bit more fun and a little bit more low-key. So I was just thinking, boys, what is your favorite movie speech? Could be a good guy, bad guy, monologue, just a good moment. Lots of options. I'm sure we'll have lots of honorable mentions as well. I'm going to start off with the king, if you will, of military speeches, and that is the ride to Sauron in Return of the King, when Aragorn leads the troops for Frodo going to Mordor. I love that scene. Every once in a while, I just go onto YouTube and I type that in and just get inspired and then go back to editing.
That was one of the first ones that came to mind when you pitched this for me, so I approve.
Same. My pick was actually going to be a Lord of the Rings speech, but I'm going to pivot now to give us some variety. But it wasn't actually that one. That went through my head, and also the Ride of the Rohirrim speech that King Theoden gives also came to my head. But Lord of the Rings is just made for grand speeches.
Complete with the music and everything, too. You just can't top it.
There's epicness everywhere.
Yeah, some series build their entire series of movies to get to a scene like that, and Lord of the Rings has 4 in a movie. Mm-hmm. It's not fair. It's too easy.
Yeah, even in the Two Towers, I know it's kind of intercut with voiceovers and stuff, but the one that Sam gives.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's an excellent one.
That was going to be my pick. That was the one I was referencing, yeah. You know, I really do like that Aragorn speech, but it's very much just like, not a lot of poignancy to it. It's supposed to get you pumped up. Whereas that Sam speech is so very much like, we need to hold on to hope. We need to hold on to the stories that they'll tell about us and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
And it's a lot more relatable too, right?
Right. Very impactful. But I'm going to pivot, so I have something different.
Yeah, I had a couple. Lord of the Rings came to mind, but like you, I wanted to do something just in case somebody picked it, which they did. I wanted to go elsewhere. So I do like. There's some really good Fight Club speeches. I love the Robin Williams one in Good Will Hunting toward the end. But I mean, how do I not go with Ezekiel 25:17 in Pulp Fiction? I mean, come on.
Yep. On my notes, I have Pulp Fiction and then parentheses Jake, close parentheses. Yeah. So I was like, all right, that's going to be off the board.
That's fantastic.
After like 5 minutes of research, I was like, oh, I know what I'm choosing.
Yeah, I mean, every single line in that speech is iconic. It's unbelievable.
And that's Tarantino at his best, too. Like, if there's one thing he's good at, it's engaging, riveting dialogue that you just love every syllable to, and that speech in particular.
And
yeah, chef's kiss.
As brilliantly written and delivered as it is, he builds up to it too. He's like, there's a passage I got memorized. I'm going to rehearse it to you here, and he kind of just builds up to it, and then his delivery is just unbelievable. And then it's followed by murder, and it's just all together. It's perfect. Like,
and they even expand upon it within the movie. You know, he goes back to that speech and just says, "It's a ice cold thing I say to people before I kill them," kind of thing. And now I'm really paying attention to what I've been saying.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
The way that he starts, like, so buddy with them as well. Like,
yeah,
it starts as small talk and then it turns literally biblical by the end of it. It's like, it's magnetic is the best way to say it. Like, Samuel L. Jackson, it probably was written directly for him, and you just feel every word reverberate because these are words that he is very comfortable with. Clearly.
Yeah,
escalates quickly.
Yes, absolutely. So those were both on my short list. I'm gonna go with this one. I'm going to go with Heath Ledger's series of speeches and monologues in The Dark Knight. Ooh. So this is going to count 2 to 3 different speeches he gives about the story of how he got his scars. And of course, that story shifts every time he tells it to a different character. I think he tells 2 and then starts to tell a 3rd and then gets cut off, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But it's just such like, the first time it's riveting because you're like, oh, should I feel bad for this guy? I mean, he's a monster. And then the second time, it's like, oh no, he's doing this to mess with people. And it's such a brilliant device. And Ledger, again, his delivery is so good because you almost start thinking you're going to feel sympathetic for him and starting to understand why he's a monster. And then you're like, wait a minute, no, this guy.
He's
like,
psycho.
Yeah.
Definition.
Oh man. Yeah, the first one in particular, I love. Like, I remember after that came out, I memorized that speech the amount of times that I rewatched it on YouTube. It's so good. Very similar to the Pulp Fiction one that you picked, Jake. It's no music, or in the case of The Dark Knight, very little music.
Yeah.
With that kind of like crescendo in the background. And you are fully focused on the dialogue and their actors' fantastic delivery of it.
Yeah, just reeled right in.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I know we chose all movies, but as I look to my right at the Breaking Bad poster in my room, my college Breaking Bad poster, there's 1 or 2 speeches in that one too, if we're just going to hinder on this for a second. Walter White gives some great ones.
I asked Nate before we started if these are specifically movies for that reason. The specific one I had written down is the I'm the One Who Knocks speech.
Oh,
from like season, I think it's from season 4. And it is a chilling scene. Yeah, that was one I had written down. That's a good one.
Well, if you guys are going to keep on bringing up your anti-hero or bad guy speeches, very, very chilling moments, I'll pivot back to a happy one, if you will. And from an unexpected source, too. This speech is so iconic that SNL just recently kind of poked fun out of it. The critic's speech at the end of Ratatouille by Ego is one of the most uplifting monologues I've ever seen put to film, because it just relates to everything. It's all just about how, like, art comes from anywhere, and how one moment can really open up your eyes to a whole new perspective on life. And I love that speech too.
Yeah, that SNL skit was gross as hell, by the way.
We don't need to go there, But the fact that even a decade after that movie came out, it's still
15
topical
years
enough.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys are willing to be like, like pastors for a sec, I have to repent my sins because I've still never seen Ratatouille.
Yeah, that's a must.
What?
Yeah, that's one of the big ones.
How
I'm
are
still
you
missing.
on this show if you haven't seen all the Pixar movies, Jake?
Yeah,
Unacceptable.
I know, that's a big one.
You know what, Nate? Let's hang up and start our own call.
There's a good segment for us, Middle Seat Survivor. Jake is kicked off the island first.
Yeah. Oh, I would suck at Survivor, though.
Yeah.
Right. A couple others I had written down, and then we got to move on. Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson's long monologue about how their marriage went long. Even if you want to do the fight between the two of them. The Lighthouse from last year, where Willem Dafoe is just screaming about lobster.
I was going to say that. I was going to bring that one up.
That's a good one.
That's such a good one. Jack Nicholson's You Can't Handle the Truth is a pretty great one as well.
That's a movie I haven't seen, actually.
What? Drew, what are you doing on this podcast without having seen every movie in existence?
I was going to say, Nate, your turn is coming, so. Any others, Nate?
I'm going to call it there. That's a lot of movies. We've got to save more for the sequel.
Yes, we do.
I like it.
All right, so this section of the Middle Seats podcast, this monologue, per se, it's not really a monologue, but I was trying to be clever. Let's just move on to news.
And this just in, a Newsbreak special report.
This is breaking news. I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
So, one of Hollywood's favorite things to do is make movies about things that are happening in current events, even if said things don't absolutely, positively need a movie. Sometimes it feels like it's not going to work, and then sometimes it really does work. Like The Social Network is a great example of that, where people scoffed at the idea of a Facebook movie. This one I'm pretty confident is not going to work. If you have not been following the news recently, at the beginning of this month / late last month in January, there was a big spike in GameStop stock, basically perpetrated by people online who banded together and decided to bump up the price and buy a lot of GameStop stock. That's the most simple Neanderthal brain way I can put it. Nate could give you the analytics, but nobody cares. I'm sorry, Nate. Anyway, what you need to know is that GameStop stock was up in the hundreds for a little bit. It's now back down to like $52. But it was a bit of an anomaly and a phenomenon, and people were talking about it a lot. And that was enough to put 6 different movies and television series in production on this one
6
topic.
now?
Yes. Yeah. Since we last talked, there's been
Lord.
another one added. So let me just go through them real quick. The big, I think, headliners, a Netflix movie being written by Mark Bowl, who wrote Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker, starring Noah Centineo of To All the Boys I Loved Before and a bunch of other Netflix
They
movies.
already have casts for this?
He is attached, yes. So
Oh
we've got,
my God.
So we've got that. MGM wants to make a movie based on the book proposal, The Anti-Social Network, from the writer of the book that eventually became The Social Network by David Fincher. So they are developing a movie based on a book that hasn't even been written yet. There's going to be a limited series called To the Moon. I don't know where that's going to be. The guy who created the Reddit forum, Wall Street Bets, he sold his life rights to Rat Pack Entertainment. So they're going to be working on something probably about him, I guess. There's going to be a documentary by XTR and The Optimist, funded partially by GoFundMe. So you want to talk about full circle, the internet giving people money to make a movie about their own contributions to the stock market. And then HBO is working on some kind of scripted movie that will probably be coming out by a time where nobody even remembers this or even cares. So obviously I'm not doing a good job of not being biased about what I think of this, but like, we don't need to talk specifically about the GameStop anomaly as it is. We can talk about the idea of Hollywood adapting things just as they come out. Is there a grace period that needs to happen before they put these things into development to actually see how they play out? This goes for coronavirus movies too, to be honest. Like, we're still in the middle of this. So Jake, what are your thoughts about this entire situation?
I'm not surprised that people already want to make a movie about it because it was the hottest thing on the internet at one point. But that's the thing, at one point, it's already kind of starting to, like, as the internet does, move on. The internet moves fast. Like, 1, I don't know that we know what the ending of the story is. But 2, if we do, it just like, all right, it was a big event that happened. Why do we need a movie or 5 about this? It's just, it was a big thing that happened on the internet. It swept the nation for a couple weeks. That's it. Like, make one when you know what the story is, if you have to. And I think the only person who should be attached to this is Adam McKay, who, for those who don't know, he did The Big Short. I feel like he would be a good guy for this. And then other than that, like, everybody calm down.
The Big Short is this on a macro level because that affected millions of people and was such a big deal. Mm-hmm. But it was also complicated in the same way. It didn't even affect that many people. Like, obviously a lot of people jumped on the stock, but like, did that many people really lose their money and stuff like that? Nate, as one of the investors... All
right. I may be on Reddit, but don't pick on me too much here.
I first heard about this from you. So...
Yeah,
don't be surprised if there's a character like that is modeled after you in this. Like, who do you want to play you? How about we'll ask that?
Myself, so I can get all the royalties. That sounds like a good bang to me.
Nobody can be Nate but Nate.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in total agreement with Jake on this one, and I'm pretty sure you too, Drew. Like, this does not need to be made. I love this story. I think this story is so cool that the internet basically rallied together to momentarily outbid a hedge fund and give them a run for their money. Whether or not there was any actual damage to that firm remains to be seen. It's still developing. The stock and the short that followed appears to be basically over, but Wall Street Bets is still going off on the front page every now and then saying, I got to hold my shares, blah, 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 blah. Like, I love the story on a macro meme level as, like, a fun distraction for the month of February and January here, but this is not movie material.
No.
This isn't even, like, one special on CSI kind of good. This is just a fun little blip that is going to fade away the same way like left shark memes and keyboard cat memes faded away to the internet.
Yeah.
A fun little thing, it just pops up every now and then, but that's it.
Well, that's the thing that gets me, because I've been burned before thinking things were going to be stupid and the movies end up being fantastic. Like Social Network obviously is the major example of a concept that really wasn't compelling or didn't seem like it had anything compelling, but they found an angle to it that made it compelling. The Lego Movie is another example of something that just sounded awful, but they found an angle to make it interesting. But the thing is about those things is that those concepts and those ideas at least are like a worldwide phenomenon, or like things that actually have some kind of footprint in the cultural zeitgeist. Like, Nate, you're absolutely right. This is going to be a blip. Like, what did you say? Did you compare it to Left Shark? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
There were some memes about it because of the Super Bowl. But before that, yeah, oh my God.
The vibes I'm getting are the movie with Tom Hanks. Remember the movie Sully that came out a few years ago?
Yeah.
Sully was an amazing event where this guy, we all know the story. He landed on the Hudson. He saved a bunch of people. It was amazing. But the movie was like, there was no conflict to it. Like, that happened and then great. It didn't need to be a movie. You want to make like a short documentary series or something like that to honor him or like, show how much of a hero he is, great. But as a dramatic Oscar bait kind of movie, it just didn't work. And I'm kind of feeling like this is going to be similar.
The one question I'll pose to you, Drew, is like, how often does this happen where a whole bunch of different Hollywood fish jump on a story to try to make the movie first, and then all the other ones just kind of drop the project because they lost the race?
It happens every once in a while, but not to this scale. You know what I mean? Like, what will happen usually is a company will buy the rights to a story, and then everybody else will be locked out. But since this was like a public thing, there are a bunch of different specific rights being bought here, if that makes sense. Like a book proposal being bought. One is just being based on the true story elements that we've learned through the news. Another's being specifically tailored for the guy who created this Reddit forum. So these are the different angles that are being approached at, which gives them an excuse to be like, oh, but this is how our version's going to be different. At the root, it's probably all going to be the same, like themes of David versus Goliath and, capitalism and the economy and stuff like that. Like, they're all going to say the same thing, just with a different viewpoint.
And instead of a Captain Sully leading the movie, you have usernames of Redditors.
Right.
Deep Effin' Value is the lead character.
What's your Reddit
Lord.
name, by the way, so they can follow you on Reddit? Can you follow people on Reddit?
You could, but that's not what you do.
Okay, got it. I spent one day on Reddit and subsequently left in anger because I tried to post one of my articles for people to read, and they were like, you can't self-promote. And I was like, well, everybody does it here.
You didn't post it anonymously, Drew, and that's your issue.
I see.
I'm too afraid of Reddit. I'm afraid of the holes that people go down, and I know it'll happen to me.
You're intimidated by Reddit. You and I are Twitter
I'm afraid.
boys. We're Twitter boys. It's fine. Yeah.
Uncultured swine. What? Who said that?
Yeah. I heard that. That's GameStop. Let's move on to from a terrible idea to a possible terrible person. Let's talk about Gina Carano.
Oof, coming out hot.
That was mean. Remember we went all wholesome last time?
This is going to be the opposite.
Yeah.
It's a dark, edgy movie for a dark, edgy podcast.
Yes. If you don't know who Gina Carano is, she is a former MMA fighter who transitioned into being an actress. Fast and Furious 6, Deadpool, her biggest thing, and the thing that's relevant to this conversation is she played Cara Dune on 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. The MMA part of it is relevant because I'm hoping the reason that she posts some of the stuff she posts is because she got hit in the head too many times, because she is very much known for some really hateful things that she says online. So just going through, I made a big list of them because they're very easy to find. She mocked Black Lives Matter in August 2020. She changed her bio on Twitter to have transphobic stuff in it, even though Pedro Pascal, her co-star in The Mandalorian's sister, I believe is transgender. She made fun of voter fraud. She basically said that COVID's a hoax at points. She said a lot of things. And this past week was ostensibly the final straw because she shared an Instagram post that compared hating someone for their political views to the persecution of Jewish people of Germany during the Holocaust, which is, if you're ever thinking about posting something about the Holocaust, unless it's on Holocaust Remembrance Day, I would just leave it in the drafts or just delete it and delete your account. But the hashtag Fire Gina Carano started to trend on Twitter, and Disney finally pulled the plug. She will not be invited back from The Mandalorian. So we could talk about Gina Carano as a person herself, but I think, Nate, if we're going to talk general discussion, there's the talk of cancel culture, and did Disney wait too long to pull the trigger on this? Why now? Was it just because of the pressure of the hashtag? There's a lot of different points to it. But do you think you're going to be seeing studios having more of a no tolerance policy for this kind of stuff going forward, or do you think it's going to be a case by case thing?
Oh, hard to say. We live in a world where a former president of the United States is banned from Twitter.
I love that you said former. It feels so good to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject. Conservative social media is going off about how this is a violation of free speech, and Hollywood's being elitist and totally hypocritical because left-wing Hollywood actors and actresses and studios are having lots of hateful rhetoric too, but they don't get punished for it the same way. At the end of the day, it's a lot of noise, and just remember to take a step back, and the world does not revolve around social media. And I think that'll do you some good as a listener here. But yeah, this is another example of cancel culture, quote unquote, getting someone. I think you can definitely make the case that this actress deserved it. I think that you can definitely make the case that Disney made the right call by letting her go, because she seemed problematic to both Disney's brand and everything that it wants to associate with. And at the end of the day, they are a private company. They get to do however they want to conduct their business. If you want to work with them, then they will figure out what they like and what they don't like. Right. They did the same thing with James Gunn a couple years back too. Remember, he was fired for bad tweets. And his career is not over. He had to come out and apologize for that, and his tweets weren't as racially charged, but it's a situation that's happened before, I think is going to continue to happen. And at the end of the day, I'm just hoping that people working in this business are just more careful about what they tweet.
Yeah, I mean, if they even care or not, you know what I mean? That's the thing. And that seemed to be...
Yeah.
People are going to argue that her freedom of speech rights are being violated. But Disney, all things considered, were pretty patient with her, given that this is not the James Gunn one was a first offense, and it was from years ago. This is recent history and a different climate than even the James Gunn tweet was from 2013. And when is enough enough? Like, how many strikes do you get before you've gotten too many?
Yeah. Here's the thing for me, right? So ever since the internet came around, our parents told us, be careful what you post on the internet, right? If you post something bad, you can get in trouble. And a company can see what you post and decide, wow, this is not at all what we identify with as a company. And we don't want people thinking this employee represents us. This is not the message we want to get across, and especially if this person is going to be a major face in a TV show like a franchise, like The Mandalorian. That can be problematic for them. So the Gina Carano thing occurs to me this way, right? We all watch The Office and laugh at how outlandish Michael Scott is, right? With the things he says, the things he does. Because, yeah, he's funny, but also it couldn't happen. That type of employee would be fired 90% of the time over the things he says and does. Everybody knows this, so that's partly why The Office, it's funny, it's ridiculous. But in the real world, if you say horrid and deeply insensitive things, there's going to be consequences. That's just how it works.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, I can't walk into work tomorrow and say something insensitive or racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, which was her last one. If my boss fires me, I can't accuse her of canceling me or taking away my First Amendment right. It just doesn't work like that. So this whole, oh, Gina Carano's getting canceled. No, she said something really, really bad. A bunch of things that were really bad. And this is how the world works. You can't just get away with saying whatever you want and walk away scot-free.
It's a classic case of freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it is at the end of the day. And I don't want to paint the picture of Gina Carano being a 100% bad person. I think she was at a charity event when she heard this news the same time that everyone else did.
That's funny.
A lot of her other tweets can be looked at as empowering. She had a lot of just gung-ho stuff because she's an MMA fighter. She's into that sort of thing. A person never is completely bad here, but you are measured by all your attributes, and Disney looked at this and said, yeah, this is not worth our time.
Yeah.
Bye. And that's their right to do that. That's any company's right to do that. And same thing happens here.
I'm going to close with a relevant story that kind of goes off of what Jake was talking about. We've been taught by everybody from our parents to our educators to just watch what you say and just understand that there are consequences to what you say. And this was a small lesson I learned early in 7th or 8th grade. I posted this photo at a Yankee game on Facebook, and I remember I thought I was being funny, so there was a photo of with a U.S. soldier in it or something, and I tagged it dude from war. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever. It's 7th grade. My mom, she shut that shit down immediately because she knows what the repercussions would be if somebody 10 years from now even saw that. Just because you're famous doesn't mean you're immune to that kind of... You don't get to be rude. You don't get to be hateful just because you make 6 figures and you're in Star Wars.
You still have to be a decent person.
Right. I'm glad that there is some kind of precedent and some kind of example being set here. You can still be punished, and you won't necessarily get what you want.
I can't wait for Deadpool 3 to make fun of this whole thing. I can't wait.
They might want to be careful.
Yeah, honestly, I think they'll avoid it, but...
Because she wasn't in the second one anyway, so they could get away with it. But we'll see.
Yeah, didn't she die?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So we were just talking about people complaining on the internet and being punished for it. Speaking of people complaining on the internet and getting exactly what they want, let's talk about the Snyder Cut and the new trailer for the Snyder Cut.
I had a dream. I think there's an attack coming.
This world will fall.
I'm building an alliance to defend ourselves.
If you can't bring down the charging bull, then don't wave the red cape at it.
They said the age of heroes would never come again.
It will. It has to.
We live in a society.
Isn't that right?
Batman.
So the Snyder Cut, aka Justice League, the Zack Snyder's Justice League, or whatever it's called, is directed by Zack Snyder. If you're feeling a bit of deja vu, it's because we reviewed this movie, or a version of this movie, or the bare bones of this movie, or part of this movie, or whatever you want to say, back in 2017 when we were a bunch of wee young lads, a wee young podcast. That movie was co-directed by Joss Whedon. We all thought it was pretty mediocre. We gave it 2 wooden seats and a damp lawn chair. I won't put it on who gave it a wooden seat and who gave it damp lawn chair.
I'll give you one guess which guys were stupid enough to give it a positive rating. Good Lord.
But the consensus was overall that not the worst thing in the world, but pretty mediocre. Ever since that movie came out, Zack Snyder, who had to leave the project under tragic circumstances, has basically been saying, oh, my original vision would have been amazing. You guys have not even seen what my original vision would have looked like. And the Snyder Cut concept was born. The hashtag formalized by the actors who were tweeting out, release the Snyder Cut, like Ben Affleck got behind it publicly, Gal Gadot got behind it publicly, and Warner Brothers, looking for something to sell HBO Max, decided to make what ostensibly was a fan theory that this cut existed into a reality. So on March 18th, the Snyder Cut, the 4-hour version of Zack Snyder's superhero blockbuster that came out a couple of years ago, was being released. It cost $70 million for them to complete the visual effects, score, and editing. They had to shoot new material for the film in October. They added Darkseid, who was one of the big DC villains. He was just hinted at in the original version. Jared Leto is back as the Joker, is another big thing. And there's a lot of debate of whether this actually was ready to go pre-pandemic, or if the pandemic allowed this to happen. That's just one element of this whole thing. And I can't believe we're talking about a Justice League movie again from Zack Snyder this far after we reviewed the original, but it's coming.
I just want it to go away.
It's coming in a month, Jake, so
I can't wait because I want this little internet blip in history to just move on. It's not I can't wait for this movie so I can watch it. I can't wait for the internet to watch it and just move on with our lives. I'm so sick of this movie already. It's not even out yet.
To rebuttal that a little bit, just get the conversation going, I feel like the people that have been asking for it for so long have been on this train for so long that they're not going to be able to shut up about it when it comes out. So I don't know if that's going to happen, buddy.
Oh my God, I'm so sick of this movie.
This is where it pays to be on Reddit instead of Twitter, because I can avoid the stories I don't want to listen to.
I don't understand what anybody is so excited about. Why are we getting so hyped over the man that did Batman vs. Superman? That was his last legitimate directed movie. If you don't count Justice League, because Joss Whedon had a hand in it, his last legitimate movie was Batman vs. Superman, which was bad. Before that, Man of Steel, which was, if you're in a good mood, it's pretty good. If you're really looking at it with a critical eye, it's okay. Why is this man getting so much credit and so much creative control to put together a 4-hour movie that looks like everything we've already seen? It's dark, it's heavy CGI, it's gloomy, it's grit. I don't understand what the hype is. Why does he get 4 hours to do it?
A lot of entertainment journalists were talking about the lead up to the 2017 version of Justice League, even before Snyder left the project. And Snyder, at the Comic-Con presentation before he left the project, either in 2016 or 2017, talked a lot about how he wanted Justice League to be lighter than Batman v Superman, because Batman v Superman is known for being so grim. Ugh, and Snyder apparently was trying to pitch the movie as a, not like a straight comedy, but a mix of drama and comedy. So for 2017's Justice League to get maligned for having comedy, and now Snyder is coming back into the fray and gets to course correct like this, this whole thing is so odd. And Nate, as a detractor of the DCEU in general, I mean...
Yeah, he hates this stuff more than we do.
Yeah, but I also think he's more apathetic than you are to this concept.
I'm so sick of these internet fanboys is really what it is.
You're angry, I'm indifferent. I think if I'm going to go in with at least a somewhat open mind, because I think we're all very down on this, and righteously so, reports that I've seen is that when Whedon took over, a lot of the movie was reshot. So we potentially could be seeing a lot more new content than we initially thought when this whole Snyder Cut business started. all back, a year ago now?
Yeah, yep, around this time last year, I think.
So there's a good chance that what we see in the movie is actually new to audiences, which could potentially be cool, he says questionably. Not really that cool. I think we're going to see, realistically, just a lot of different versions of takes, like the fight when Superman wakes up kind of thing. Maybe we're going to see a different version of that fight. Same location, same end result, if you will, but it just will be a different version of that and with different shots and cool. And you know what? To fans of the DCEU, all the more power to you. I'm going to watch this and then forget about it.
One more point before we could talk about what's specifically in the trailer, like the big things we saw. Obviously, Jared Leto is the big buzzy point.
Why are we so excited to get him back?
Yeah. He literally says a meme line. He gets to redo his performance, too. I mean, he's just playing a different character. He's playing... it looks like a closer version of like Joaquin and Heath Ledger's performance than what he was in Suicide Squad, which okay.
And he's going to show up for one scene and be done with it. I guarantee it.
Yeah, tops 2 or 3 scenes, if that. The black suit Superman, the Darkseid stuff looks cool. So like Nate, I agree with you that it's probably going to be a lot of different takes and stuff, but I wonder, that's fundamentally adding a whole other villain to the proceedings. And this is a major villain that they're adding.
Yeah, this is Thanos, but for the DC. Yeah.
What I just can't believe how derailed this entire DCEU thing is. And the last point I wanted to make is kind of talk about, we've talked about this in the past with the Sonic the Hedgehog thing, where they redesigned the character for the better. This trend that the influence that the internet has right now, where they can say that they want something done so often that studios will just do it. And I'm glad that they're listening to fans and stuff like that, but also at the same time, did we really need a 4-hour redo? No, we probably didn't, and those fans probably would have gotten over it eventually. But now we're feeding into them, so now... Oh, remember how there was the chatters that David Ayer was going to redo Suicide Squad? Like, are we just going to redo every bad movie? Like, that is a waste of time if we're really talking about pushing forward towards original content.
There was a legitimate petition to have them remove The Last Jedi from the Star Wars canon and have it remade. Are you guys serious?
Same thing with, like, for another HBO thing, like Game of Thrones Season 8 getting remade or something like that.
Yeah, that
People
one too.
want that, too.
My God.
Yeah, so if cancel culture can get people fired, what do you call this phenomenon?
Stupid.
Reincarnation culture. Resurrection culture.
No matter how you slice it, the internet is a force, and right. I don't think we really can get much past that.
And here's the thing about all this. I'm open to be surprised, right? If they actually do somehow stitch together a good 4-hour-long cut of Justice League under Snyder, cool. Okay. Then we have a different version of a movie that ended up being good. Okay. But I'm just so sick of these fanboys. It's really the main thing. Like, if it's good, great, but stop shoving this down our throats. It's like the Taylor Swift stuff. Like, leave us alone.
Hey, enough of that. Enough of that.
They're too much also. Same with the angry Star Wars people. You're too much. You're all too much.
We're moving on before this gets contentious, pal.
But, I'm open to it. Let's go.
Good Lord.
The phrase that I think would actually fit all of this is mob influence, where it's just like these masses are just so loud. And I mean, you're correct about that, Jake, where they're so loud that the studios are hearing them, and that's great, I guess, but not always for better. So Snyder Cut, March 18th on HBO Max, 4 hours long. The day before, Falcon and Winter Soldier premieres on Disney+, so a little DC Marvel battle. So that'll do it for news. Let's move into our feature review of something that is on HBO Max right now, Judas and the Black Messiah.
Repeat after me. I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.
You're looking at 18 months for the stolen car, 5 years for impersonating a federal officer.
The Black Badges are forming a rainbow coalition of oppressed brothers and sisters of every color.
These ain't no terrorists.
You can murder revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution.
Judas and the Black Messiah, as I said, is available on HBO Max right now and in theaters as we speak. It is directed by Shaka King. It was technically a 2021 release, but because of the pushed back window of when things could be eligible for Oscars, it is eligible for 2020 Oscars, which we'll hopefully be learning about shortly. It's based on a true story. It tells the story of Wild Bill O'Neill, who was a criminal. He's played by Lakeith Stanfield. He was a criminal, and he is arrested and basically made by FBI agent Roy Mitchell. He's basically blackmailed into joining the Black Panther Party of Chicago. Roy Mitchell, played by Jesse Plemons, and the head of that Black Panther Party is Fred Hampton, played by Daniel Kaluuya, who is best known, of course, for his role in Get Out. He's been in a lot of things, an episode of Black Mirror, Widows. Lakeith Stanfield, also of Get Out fame. These are two of the biggest up-and-coming actors out there. And a nice, based on a true story, activism movie. It's a big drama. It's got thriller elements to it. It's got a lot of civil rights subtext to it. Bring a lot of emotions out of people. It's being critically acclaimed. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival a couple of weeks ago. So this is a little heavier than our usual brand of movie. Like, guys, we were talking about possibly reviewing Tom and Jerry next time out. Like, this is usually not in our wheelhouse.
Just a little different.
But this will be a good discussion, I think, because there is a lot of interesting, meaty stuff to talk about with Judas and the Black Messiah, and I'm excited to get into it with you guys. Let's start with Nate. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, this was a story I was unfamiliar with. So the names of Fred Hampton and William O'Neill, those were new to me, and seeing these characters on the screen was definitely eye-opening. The movie is very good. The movie is incredibly topical, especially after the summer that we all had. And I think it just does a damn good job showing this really troubled man have to navigate this very complex political situation. And I don't know, is it a spoiler to start talking about the events of the movie yet? Can I get there if it already happened?
That's a tough call for me because I didn't know. You know,
yeah, and if people are going into the movie blind, then I wouldn't want to spoil anything personally.
Okay, well,
yeah,
the movie's called Judas and the Black Messiah, so you can get a little sense of where the story is going and the ultimate betrayal that happens here. But the lead up to get there and the aftermath of it is a shocking story, and it's one of those moments where I'm just like, why didn't I learn this in school? and that kind of stuff is frustrating, especially when you really think about how much of the world still revolves like this. And it makes for a powerful piece. It really does. I very much enjoyed the movie.
So, I mean, we've been seeing movies like this for years now, Jake. And it feels like black stories being told by black artists have become more and more of a thing. Get Out, of course, is a great example. Selma, Black Klansman's another one. There's a lot of them where it's just this very unique perspective, and it's got this passion behind it. Where does this rank in terms of those kind of movies for you? What did you think overall?
Damn, I'm getting put on the spot with movies I've missed. I didn't see Black Klansman yet either. I know.
That one's legitimately great. I love that movie.
Yeah, I remember Nate was high on it.
That's one of my favorite spikes, yeah.
Yeah, made your list that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did love Selma. I thought Selma was great. I thought this one was good. I thought it was a good story. There's parts of maybe it's the direction. I'm not always clear on these aspects yet. There's something about it that didn't grip me all the way through, but it is a really good story. It's really engaging. I love the moral conflict in Bill O'Neill's character. That was really one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. And I thought Kaluuya was excellent. From the minute he takes the screen until the ending, commands the screen, and he is just awesome the entire time.
Yeah, he's electrifying. I love him.
Yeah, every time he's on screen, I'm just like, wow, this guy's crushing it. I thought Lakeith was great also. I like Jesse Plemons a lot. I thought the acting top to bottom was really good. And overall engaging story, but it's got really, really good reviews with critics. I more just thought it was good to really good, not quite the great excellent that some of the critics are giving it. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit. And I'm, like Nate said, I'm surprised that I didn't know anything about this, like zero knowledge going in whatsoever. So that was also interesting. I'm glad that this is being told and stories like this are coming out, and getting the light and getting A-list actors to it and all that kind of stuff. I think it's awesome.
And I think the big thing with a lot of these stories that is good for white folk like us, where obviously we don't know anything about this because our textbooks are too ashamed to say things like this and detail stories like this. Like Selma's a great example. Fruitvale Station is another one. And you just leave those movies, and the really, really good ones, you're just genuinely really mad and upset when it's over. But like in a good way. Like the artistry on hand did this to you. The direction, the performances, the score, the storytelling, the writing, all came together to make you genuinely mad that this is something that could actually happen in this country that we live in. I would say I am with the critics. I really, really, really love this movie. I thought this was a phenomenal... Biopic's not the right word, because that would kind of imply that I think it follows Fred Hampton. He's actually definitely a supporting role in this, though he does get a lot of characterization. The movie is about Wild Bill, and Lakeith Stanfield really anchors this thing with a very multifaceted performance. This is a very detailed and interesting and skillfully made movie about a very interesting aspect of this entire black struggle, which is the concept of how to go about activism. And the way that the Black Panthers go about it is so fascinating to me because it's something that I didn't know. Because again, the way we're taught about the Black Panthers, and the person I saw this with, my girlfriend, she came out and she was like, my understanding of what the Black Panthers were is so much different than what they actually were according to this movie. Because we think of violence when in reality it's all about the authority being threatened by the organization of the oppressed. It's these little revelations like that this movie brought to my mind through character and through writing. I was genuinely touched by throughout.
Yeah, and there really is something to be said about that. Our government starting our own government starting the violence and, trying to get threats under control before they're even threats, really. There's a lot of stories coming out like that now, and we're starting to see a lot of it.
Totally, and it's just more in the public view too, like especially Breonna Taylor's story, like that one rings through for the tail end of this movie, something fierce that just made me so angry. From a story perspective, that you touched on there, Drew, I really like the fact that this movie was shown through Bill's eyes. I thought that was a really interesting character choice because it would be kind of easy to make this about Fred Hampton. But they chose the double agent and just kind of his internal struggle and basically how he's blackmailed into this horrible situation. That was something new. When a movie does something unique, that sticks out to me, and that's totally what sets this movie apart, I think, from other biopics of a similar theme.
But the characterization is so not simple for any of these characters. Like Lakeith Stanfield's character, in very specifically, it's very interesting how they characterize him because it's so much like, one, he's in this horrible situation, but two, if he really wanted to run, he could. I think he likes the idea of being smoozed up by the FBI a little bit. But he also likes the idea of being an activist and working with the Black Panthers. He is such a contradiction all throughout, and I think that just makes for an interesting character.
100%.
You can say that about the other characters in the movie, too. Jesse Plemons' character has a little bit of edge of that, although I did like that they do not really do much to make the FBI, even any of the characters in the FBI, feel sympathetic at all. And some people might say it's a little two-dimensional to write like J. Edgar Hoover, played by Martin Sheen, and some pretty good makeup, to kind of make him like a conniving, sniveling villain. It's like, okay, but like that's been happening with minority actors for so long in film that it's fine in this context because they are the villains of this story. They are the villains of history if we're going to look back at it, if we're looking at justice and what actually happened.
This is something that I just kind of struggle with for movies based on real stories, is that when they tend to follow the events of real life, sometimes that doesn't necessarily translate well to your traditional 3-act structure of a movie. Like real life doesn't have rising action, climax, and then a nice little bow tie ending to a story.
Right, like the GameStop thing. Like, exactly.
Yeah. With all the movies of this genre, and I don't think this one's any different, the 2/3 mark of this movie slows down dramatically from where we've been, just because that's how real life happened. And that's probably my only critique of the movie, is that like there's just that little bit of downtime where I wasn't as entertained as I was through the rest of the film. But I don't really know how a non-fictional story gets around that if it's just trying to follow the natural progression of history.
I'm kind of with you there, Nate, but I think in more instances than that one, I felt it at that moment too, like you said, around the 2/3 mark. But I think there was like a moment here, a moment there, a moment here, a moment there, where I wasn't quite gripped as much as other parts. And I think when I wasn't, I was really feeling it. But when I was gripped, I was like, wow, this is excellent. This is really interesting. I'm so engaged with this. But it felt a little bit inconsistent for me. But like you said, that's how life works. It's just kind of unfortunate for the movie portraying it.
Mm-hmm. I like see what you guys are saying. I think for me, it's kind of an opposite situation where it's actually, if I had a gripe, and it's a minor one, it didn't detract from the movie for me, but we kind of rush developments at the beginning. So when we do slow down, I felt the impact of what was happening more, because it made it very clear that these are the big singular moments of this entire story. And it added a little bit of brevity to those moments. It's interesting because this movie could work on a civil rights drama platform, but it's also a really good thriller too, and it's just a really well executed like mole story. You know what I mean? Like those are always tough to pull off. Like The Departed is a great example of that, of a fictionalized one. It does such a really good job at heightening the tension for his situation at every point it can.
For sure.
And I think aside from Kaluuya's performance, that was the stuff that I really was sinking my teeth into. The further he got into the situation, the more his moral compass, his moral code was kind of getting gray and getting more difficult. I was like, that is a fascinating character study to look at. That's the stuff I really was eating in.
So I think we should transition to ratings here, and then we can kind of get into the one big thing that we've been dancing around. If you're just joining the Middle Seats podcast for the first time, we operate on a seat scale. If we love a movie, if we think it's fantastic, has little to no flaws, we give it a Royal Throne. If we think a movie is great but has some decent flaws, we give it a plush recliner. If we think a movie is good but has some glaring issues, we give it a wooden seat. The inverse of that, if a movie is bad but has some decent things in it, we give it a damp lawn chair. And then if a movie sucks, we give it a sleazy outhouse. Bag of popcorn, little moniker next to it, if we think the movie would be worth a theater experience. I saw it in theaters. I don't know what you guys obviously watched it at home, right?
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to leave the house anyway right now, so yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You're quarantining. I forgot.
Yeah, and I'm in the city. We don't have movie theaters yet.
Yeah, that was a test. I'm your CO officer, making sure that you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, a car just pulled away from my house. Okay, he hasn't left. We're good.
Yeah, all right, coast is clear. Nate, what would you give Judas and the Black Messiah?
Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I think it told a great undertold story through a very unique lens that you don't see in your traditional biopic, even of other civil rights movies that are tackling similar themes. So it gets points for originality, gets points for great casting and great performances. And overall, just it was a good eye-opening experience. I'm going to go plush recliner on this one. Definitely worth your time, especially if you got HBO Max and you can see it at home. In terms of bag of popcorn, I don't think you need to see this one in theaters, but it definitely couldn't hurt. There are some big moments in here, but a lot of softer moments too, which work well for both the couch and the theater. But all in all, good movie. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, pretty much ditto. I would say this is definitely a plush recliner. Very good. I wouldn't say it was outstanding. I didn't end up loving it, but I do think it's very good. As a movie, very good. As a story, very good, very important. I think there's some great casting, and there's some really great writing in terms of, not to repeat the moral code stuff, but also the FBI kind of forcing him into it is not always easy to portray, and I think they really did a good job at showing the difficulty of the situation and how both sides in different ways contribute. I really liked all that. I personally think basically every movie is better in the theater, but this isn't like outstanding visuals or anything like that. So you don't need to see it in theaters, but like Nate said, can't hurt. I'm pretty much in his boat.
All right, so it's going to be the second straight episode where I'm just a tick higher, which is fine. I think that's pretty good, actually, because it allows for us to have a little bit more of a discussion instead of just agreeing the whole time. I'm going to give this a Royal Throne. I think it's worth it. I just found it, like, astoundingly well executed for what it could have been, because we've seen a lot of these movies and they turn out to be wooden seats or plush recliners, and I was afraid that it was going to be that case where there was going to be letdown, even despite the talent involved, and luckily the talent lived up to it. Like, we've talked about Shaka King's contributions, how well directed this is, how steady of a hand he lends it, but Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield and Jesse Plemons and Dominique Fishback, who we haven't even mentioned, who does an extraordinary job as Hampton's pregnant girlfriend. She does an excellent job as well. There's just a lot of talent from beginning to end. This is a very thoughtful movie, but it works on a visceral popcorn level as well if you're just looking for a thriller with a little bit of punch at the end. I think the final 45 minutes for me were pretty much perfect. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. If I had any changes, I would maybe shift a few things around at the beginning, which we can go into in spoilers when we get there, but absolutely see this. I hope it gets nominated for Best Picture. I hope Kaluuya gets nominated. I hope Stanfield's at least in the conversation. Best Actor is pretty competitive most years, but I would like for him to be at least in the conversation for it. Thumbs up all the way around. If you haven't seen the movie, tune out now, because we are going to spoil the one big thing about it that we can't talk about. If you have seen Judas and the Black Messiah, or just know history in general, come with us into spoilers.
Whoa! Oh, spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Excuse me! Spoiler alert!
So Nate, you kind of nailed it when you were talking about how the title is kind of a spoiler, or at least you like an implied spoiler. It's an allusion to a spoiler. It's hard to call it a quote-unquote spoiler because the entire legacy behind Fred Hampton is the fact that he was assassinated. And Wild Bill has a big part to play in that. That moment still, even with me having an idea that that was coming, still made my blood boil. Like, just the execution of it. It was so startlingly impactful, I thought.
Yeah, that whole raid on the house at the end it's just jaw-dropping. And the sad part is that we know this happened. We know this has happened before. And it continues to happen. Like, Breonna Taylor was not even a year ago, and it was obviously not as targeted and political as this assassination was, but gives me the same anger. I think the movie's big moment is just seeing Bill's kind of reaction to the assassination, especially like the tape recording at the end there. That's a gut punch for sure, because this whole movie we're trying to figure out who this character is. Is he regretful of his situation? Is he just kind of going with the flow? The entire course of the movie, he's always trying to get out, but never trying hard enough. And that's what makes him the Judas character. Like, at the end of the day, he's still committed the ultimate betrayal. Is feeling bad about it worth his character? And that's up to your own interpretation.
So, like, a question I would have for you, and this is a simple yes or no, would Jesse Plemons' character really have pursued him that much if he skipped town? I think the answer is no.
Probably not.
So that makes it simple there, where we're talking about motivation. He likes having a skin in the game, and I think they do a good job of him.
There's a couple shots of him, like, smiling when he gets away with lying.
Right.
You know, like, we definitely get that sense from him. He's, I won't go full sociopath, but he's got that little bit of tendency to him, and the whole movie are rooting for him to just kind of turn over a new leaf, and then he doesn't do it, and it's heartbreaking.
I don't think it villainizes him, but I don't think it's very sympathetic to him either. I think the only person in the movie that is 100% sympathetic is Fred Hampton.
And his girlfriend.
Yes, and Dominique Fishback's character, yes.
And when they released that, Fred was, 21 when this all went down?
Yep.
I didn't realize how young he was. That's crazy. That's horrible. I mean, it's horrible in general, but to be such a young man and to have so much going for you and doing so much at a young age, like, it's horrible.
It's sickening how threatened the FBI and authority was by him at 21 years old.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways that they put it that is so odd to me. Like, obviously they refer to him as a messiah, but then they don't see the implications of what assassinating him would do. Like, J. Edgar Hoover talks about how, like, okay, people are writing books in jail. They still have influence from jail. They don't think martyrdom immortalizes someone. It's just hateful. The logic even of their hate doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think the movie is very pointed about that.
Sure.
Even in the end, they, you know, like toward the end credits kind of thing, they say Fred Hampton's son ended up being the next chairman, kind of like he was, right? Like sometimes if somebody is murdered so horribly, it ends up influencing people even more so. Like I guess they didn't take that into account either. Like there's a lot at stake here, and they just completely went full force with their, you know, hate mindset, and that was it.
And I think you can see the influence that Fred has based on what happens when he's not around. Like, the movie is about Lakeith Stanfield's Wild Bill, but Fred is such a big part of it. His characterization comes through a lot of big flashy speeches and in a lot of quieter moments he has with Dominic Fishback's character. But his impact and what he is as a character, what he means to the movement, you can see when he's in prison. Because he's gone from the movie for like 25, 30 minutes, and the Black Panthers almost fall apart when he's gone.
100%,
like,
yeah.
Ashton Sanders' character, I forget the character's name. Jimmy Palmer is the character's name. Played brilliantly by Sanders, who, of course, we know is one of the kids from Moonlight, one of the three main characters from that. He goes out and he starts a fight with cops, and he gets shot up and killed. And then from that, it spirals into the police directly targeting their headquarters, them starting a shootout. Like, this kind of stuff wouldn't happen if Fred was there. He was the broker of the peace.
Yeah.
He knew how to lead and not be a pacifist, but keep his people out of trouble. And his absence leaves even more of an impact than his presence could. And I think that's a really smart decision in terms of the structure of the movie.
And I like that they showed his character that way. He was very much, you know, unity. How much can we help each other? How much can we rise up if we band together? You know, like when they, in the beginning, when they walk into that bar, and I forget the name, but
the Crowns.
The Crowns, yeah. They draw a gun on him, and he's like, "Hey, we're not looking for any of this. We'll leave. Just, you know, note, I would like to have a conversation, and, you know, we can do better if we work together instead of, you know, against each other." And I'm like, I like that this guy is all about that.
What about when he goes into the white trash meeting and basically connects with people literally standing in front of a Confederate flag by saying, like, listen, we're all oppressed in a different way.
Well, that was wild. I know the Rainbow Coalition was a real thing, but I do want to, like, look into that. Like, I cannot imagine that happening in real life. But if this man did, then he did. And that's crazy.
Right. It doesn't seem like it's a racial thing for them, though, right? I mean, like, it's more of a...
Well, he connected to him on the financial level, you know? Like,
exactly, yeah.
Cops are treating everyone the same in their movie's eyes there. To kind of pivot back into the specifics of the movie, one shot that just I keep going back to in my head that I really, really liked was like the revolutionary speech inside the church. He's back from prison. And specifically, Bill's character looking through the crowd at the FBI agent, looking back at him, and just that shot in the crowd. I loved that. It's such a weird one-off scene, but just the framing of that and the look on Bill's face as that's happening, that's really sticking with me a lot more than I would expect out of this movie.
He has such a good, like, worried, stressed out face. It's so good.
I know.
He's a great actor in general, but he might be a top 5 facial expression actor. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you can feel deep in his core what he's feeling at every moment. And yeah, that scene, they played the hell out of it in the trailers for good reason, because Kahlua is killing it up on stage. Clemens is literally standing there clapping, and he's drawing so much out of Stanfield. It's such a well executed moment. I agree completely.
And that's like when he goes full Todd too, with the punchable face. You just want to Todd from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that he's got a very what's his nickname? Meth Damon. It's pretty good.
Oh no. Nate, I agree. I thought that was a very powerful scene, but also shot, like you were saying, just Lakeith to Plemons, and without them even communicating, just looking at each other from across the room is already saying so much about the position they're both in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that too.
they interact probably more than Lakeith and Daniel Kaluuya's characters do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's just a very fascinating relationship, too, because I think you can see in another world, Wild Bill likes the idea of being an FBI stooge, having a badge. He talks about, at the beginning when they arrest him, that the idea that a badge is scarier than a gun. He likes the idea of authority. He's been on the run, clearly has been a criminal all of his life.
Yeah. And even toward the end of the movie, he's still kind of hyping up that idea. There's that point in the bar right before he's told to poison Fred, and he was just talking up to the girl at the bar, and he just casually drops off the fact that he's working with the FBI because it's a sexy pickup line at the bar, you know?
Yeah.
So the whole way through, he definitely got a little bit of a power trip from it.
Yeah. Really good cameo in that scene by Lil Rel Howery, by the way, making 3 different Get Out actors in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Holy crap.
Something interesting, and just doing a little bit of background research, and you're absolutely right, because the whole idea of the FBI, dangling in front of him like a piece of cheese, basically, to a mouse, or if we're going to be even more apt, a rat, getting them to do his bidding. They made that a really effective dynamic through the movie. We find out, of course, that Wild Bill committed suicide the same night, although his wife apparently claimed it was accidental. He was hit and killed by a car. This is a lot that would have been to get into on the postscript. But he apparently had been drinking the night the documentary came out, tried to jump out a window, was pulled back inside, and then ran into traffic and was hit by a car. So there's a little bit of mystery surrounding the circumstances of his death, but I just found that like an interesting little point. Just casually going through Wikipedia because I wanted to know so much more about this story.
That little anecdote that they put in at the end really fascinated me because that really tells me, obviously that's sad and that's tragic, but it tells me how bothered he really was by his actions. And the FBI threatened him like, all right, if you back out of this, you're going to jail for 6+ years for the crimes that we caught you doing. So either you help us and make some money or you go to jail for this. His actions just plagued him for so long until his tell-all came out and he just couldn't handle it anymore. Aside from the blackmailing, how despicable the FBI actions are too. Like, hey, gas is popular now. You can own your own gas station. You'll be a business owner. Congrats. That's basically like blood money. Like, he has to work in this gas station his entire life knowing that he got it by betraying, a great person who's trying to help people. Just rough stuff.
I think the cut, and Nate kind of alluded to this, but the cut from the interview with Lakeith throughout the movie to the real guy at the end, super startling in a good way.
Yeah.
Showing the actual archival footage of the interview was very effective because it gave you such a jolt, like, oh yeah, this is a real guy, and his actions had major consequences for an entire movement. Mm-hmm. And then he kept back and kept doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And his phrase there, he'll let the documentary speak for him, almost gave me the sense like he was trying to suppress it and he just didn't want to think about what he had done. And that ended with him taking his own life, I guess. It's a tragic story.
Yeah, it's tragic for everybody, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say on many fronts.
So let's start to move into final thoughts here, I think. Obviously, you guys can touch on whatever you need to in your wrap-up. Jake, final thoughts on Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah, top to bottom, I think it was really good. Was kind of hoping to be engaged more. As good of a story as it was, I just felt like there were, I guess this is on a director, just some slow parts that I felt myself starting to feel it. And it's not a long movie. I just started to feel a bit draggy at times. And that's probably my biggest issue, honestly. No real issues in the story. No issues in the acting or anything like that. And I hope we can get more, untold tales like this with big name actors, on big platforms like HBO Max and getting all kinds of traction on social media and Oscar buzz and stuff like that. This is the great time for it. So I would love to see more stuff like this, especially such interesting stories too. It's not just activism, it's betrayal and rats and all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of good elements here. So I'm hoping we get more of this.
Yeah, I'll second that, Jake. This is a new type of story for me just because of how I was brought up and the education that I got. And this is a good eye-opener to history, and there's a lot more where that came from, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to more stuff like BlacKkKlansman and this movie and whatever comes next. In terms of this film on its own, I think I'll just give one more kudos to all of the actors and actresses in there. I thought everyone did a fantastic job, with special shout outs to our stars. They did great work, and really happy I got to see this movie.
Yeah, I echo everything you guys have said. I'll even take it a step further. I think it is worthy, like I said, of a Best Picture nomination. I hope people watch it because they do have the accessibility to it with the HBO Max deal. But I hope that it gets that Oscar boost and is applauded for what it's able to do with a story that on paper is already interesting, but is made extra interesting by just the detailed and complex execution in terms of the writing of the actual story, in terms of the characters, in terms of everything you learn about this specific angle of the civil rights revolution at a time where we get so many stories about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. This isn't exactly an angle that we get a lot of, as Nate and Jake were saying, because it's so era specific and so specific to the city of Chicago as well, yet is such a microcosm for everything that happened at that time to these oppressed people. And I'm glad we're past that point, but really we're not. And Nate keeps bringing up Breonna Taylor, but there's so much resonance when you think about the connection between what happened then and what is still happening now. And as all these movies are, they're a call to action. Like, if you're not at least a little angry after watching this, you might need to reassess what you think about things, because that's the purpose of art like this, where it is trying to get you to wake up and realize what's going on around you. And I think this movie is incredibly effective in that way. And I think you need to watch it in terms of essential viewing, really, for anybody that's interested in kind of bettering themselves and knowing what happened in those turbulent times.
100%. It's a call to justice.
That'll do it for our review of Judas and the Black Messiah. Before we go, Nate Lungarini, where can they find us on the internet?
Alrighty, here's how you can get in touch with us. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Middle Seats. You can also listen to us on the go on all your podcast platforms, including iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and SoundCloud. For questions, comments, and updates on the show, keep an eye on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at The Middle Seats. And if you like what you hear and you want to see more content, let us know and spread the word.
In our return, this is probably the quote-unquote smallest movie we've reviewed. But if you have not listened to our reviews of Wonder Woman 1984, Tenet, and Soul before this, please check those out. We are very proud of them because we put our name on them. Otherwise, we would have just thrown them out like trash. We don't know what we're reviewing next, but we will be back within the next few weeks. Until then, for Nate Lungarini and Jake Hensler, I'm Andrew Auger. Keep that seat warm, everyone. We'll be back soon.